And there's my pretty kitty. And now you should be able to see my screen here. And again, the bit.ly's right up top here. It's at bit.ly/Q Desmos. My nickname was Q, so you'll see a lot of Q's in here. There's Q tips. This whole website is my digital learning coach website. So for those of you that don't know me, I was a math teacher for 24 years in private and public school. I worked for 7 years at Dunbar High School, and then I was math teacher for 1 year at Frederick Douglass High School. And now I serve as the digital learning coach and the school technology coordinator for Frederick Douglass High School and Carter G. Woodson Academy, which is also in the same building. So I have a lot of work with math. But when I first started teaching at Frederick Douglass, we were kind of thrown into using technology. All our students have Chromebooks there, and so I had to learn about Pearson and the Envision online, and also then got into Desmos. So I am a huge fan of Desmos, and anything you would want to use for your classroom that's on this site, feel free to use it. This right here is what we did yesterday, but it also has today's activity. So we're going to click on this link right here that says Distancing with Desmos. But I also just wanted to show you real quick, there's stuff about online testing, which we didn't get to this year too much. The online ACT, there's Desmos for new learners and how to get started with classroom activities. And then I also have integration documents for elementary school that I got from one of our elementary school lighthouse teachers, and then the AGA for Pearson. So we're also developing the middle school. So if you're a middle school teacher, I will have a Desmos for middle school this summer. That's going to be one of my projects here. So if I can get my computer to go back up, there we go. So if you click on this Distancing with Desmos link, that's going to bring you to another site where I have all of our NTI for Desmos. So if you scroll down a little bit here, a couple of things just to show you real quick. This is what we're going to do tomorrow. If you want to join me tomorrow again for the classroom activities portion, it's the same presentation I did yesterday. So we have that online, like Mr. Rayburn mentioned. But over here is the site that Desmos created. It's at desmos.com/coronavirus. And they actually have some great webinars, self-paced guides. You can schedule an appointment. And they also have some collections for classroom activities, if you haven't used those before, that are for grade 6 all the way through calculus. So we talk about those more in that classroom activity presentation. But this is something I wanted to show you today because we're going to get into the calculator. They extended their Global Math Art Contest through the end of April. So it ends next week on April 30th, and it's a pretty neat project for if you have some students that know a lot about graphs and just want to be creative. It's pretty neat, so you can click on that link. They also have some new things in their classroom activities as well. So if you'll come down here to the bottom, you'll see our slideshow for today. And if you're entering late, again, we're at bit.ly/Q Desmos. And you can go through this slideshow with me. This is kind of weird doing a presentation where you're in the Zoom, which is online, and then your presentation materials are online. But I'm going to open this up for you guys to see. Just hover over it. You can click on it, or you can just leave it right there in that website. But what we're going to talk about today is how you can use the graphing calculator in NTI for submitting assignments that your students can do, and you can also integrate it with your LMS. The two LMS that I'm going to focus on today are Canvas and Google Classroom. being two of the most used learning management systems. But if there's another system you're using for your classes, then please let me know and I can get some information for you with that. Okay, so let's just talk about the graphing calculator. This might be a review for some of you, but what we'll do after this is then I'll show you the integration. So we've got this tab open for our slideshow, and if you'll open another tab and just go to Desmos.com. Desmos.com will bring you to backslash here so you can go back a little bit so you can see what it looks like when you get on. This is Desmos.com, and then you just go to start graphing. What I'd love for you to do right now is go to the top, and what you'll see is that you haven't signed in unless you were on this previously today or even yesterday and didn't close out your computer. But all you have to do is sign in with Google. And you don't have to create an account. You already have one with your single sign-on with your school email and password. And do that right now, because what you can do is save anything you put in here. So this is separate from teacher.desmos.com, which you've done before. And this is also separate for our students in student.desmos.com. So that's something that you want to be aware of. So while you're doing that, again, using that sign in, right next to your name, once you get signed on, you'll see there's a link for the Global Math Art Contest that we just mentioned. We're going to talk about this share feature a lot today. There's a help section if you get stuck on something. And then there's also a language session, which I love. The accessibility features that are within the graphing calculator are dynamic. Okay, so hopefully everyone is logged in and has now their Desmos calculator account going. What we've got here is a couple different sections. Most of our toggles and things that we want to click on are kind of around here, if you aren't aware. Again, this is going to be my name. I can click on this and look at account settings, the math contest, the share, the help, and the language. This is going to be something that we're going to look at here in a moment is, our graphing tools. So there's even a Braille mode in here, which is amazing. I've got different polar graph and regular graphs that I can use. We can put arrows on the ends of things. This is really nice in terms of using real data. Students can change their X and Y axis, and you can add labels as well. And you can go from degrees and radians if you're doing something with trigonometry. We also have the zoom in and out. I can play with those, and the minute I start playing with those, I get a home button, which I love this, is that goes right back to where my start was, and I can do the same thing with the zoom in and out. Okay, so if you come across here to the left, right here I have the name of the untitled graph, and I can just click on that and save this graph. So the minute I create the name and hit save, that's how it'll save it. And then I can save it here as well. So I can save changes too. And it won't do that automatically. So be careful of that. Then I can come over here to my hamburger and I can click on the hamburger. And then I have got lots of graphs, saved graphs, the current graph I'm on. And actually, if you scroll down, you've got some example graphs. So this kind of can give you an example of different types of graphs in terms of all the way from calculus, statistics, and so forth, transformations, polar, and so on. So you can take a look at those. They go from basically the lowest level of math, like algebra and middle school math, all the way to calculus in that order. So what I want to show you right now is a graph that I made. So we can talk about just a few of the tools that you can use with the graphing calculator. So I'm going to click on this graph that I created earlier, and I'm going to hit Open Graph. So I took some data off of the CDC website. This might be something you'd want to do in an Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 class to show an example of regression. So I can create, if I'm out of the hamburger now, I can go down to the plus sign, and I can create an expression, which is just basically typing in mathematical expression. I can put in a note, which is what I did here in number 2. I can put in a table, which is what I did here in number 1. And then if I wanted to make a collection of something for them to look at, I can create a folder, and I can also upload an image, which I don't do many of these, but definitely the first 3 are important. I can also just type in expressions. I can turn off graphs once I have them in there, and I can turn off plots as well. So those are just some of the options that you have. And then I just typed in the numbers here from some information. This is prediction data. Put in a note about what it was, because I want my students to know that. And then this is how we do regression. One place for you to learn more about, and I'm going to add a note in here so you can see it, is if you go to learn.desmos.com, it will basically have anything that you could want to know about Desmos. So there is a feature in learn.desmos.com that's on regression and tables. So lots of the things, the aspects that we're talking about today have really short, nice YouTube videos that you can get on learn.desmos.com. So definitely take advantage of that. So I did a linear regression here, and I also did an exponential regression, just so I could show my students the difference, or I could tell them to do one, show them how to do it. I could talk to them about which they think is a better regression, and then if they can make predictions of what's going to happen after 6 weeks or 7 weeks. When students do a table, however, what you want to, I'm going to turn these off so you can see just the dots. This isn't going to automatically, it's actually going to look like this when they put in the data. So one of the features I mentioned before is this graph setting. So you can have your students kind of play around with it, or you can give them the opportunity to experiment with different numbers here. So my X values are from 1 to 4. So maybe I do 0 through 10. And then definitely my Y-axis numbers, I might go from 100 to, I see that my largest Y value there is 700. So maybe I'll do 750. And then I can actually increase the steps as well. And at any time I don't like that, I can go back to the home, but then I can see it. And it's kind of neat to show them maybe how you can manipulate data to look a certain way based on the way that you present it. So just some neat ideas there. So if you didn't want to do any of this regression stuff, you could just have an open graph and just have that untitled graph that we had before. I can go back to my blank graph. Again, I didn't save anything that I just typed, and you could just show them how to use the calculator. So it will just do basic math expressions. If you are used to using the scientific calculator, at the bottom here, you can click up on the keypad and it has all of those features. You can get superscripts by using your shift and your caret key. So there's some shortcuts. When they type in like a Y1, it'll automatically default. All I typed there was a Y and the number 1. I didn't do any superscripts, it guessed it. So it does some features that are, that it implies would happen if you were typing a Y1. So that's kind of neat too. So all of those features are down here. It's really a nice software to just let your students do math expressions with, but also being careful of order of operations and so forth. So it'll do what I tell it to do, similar to what you would have with a TI calculator. So they need to be careful of parentheses and so forth. The division is nice because all I have to do is hit that backslash and it already knows division. And then I can tab out of that if I don't want to be in that denominator anymore. So those are just a few tricks if you haven't worked with the mathematical features of that scientific calculator. So that's just a little bit about it. And again, if I wanted to save this, I could rename it, hit save. And then the pretty neat thing here is that we can then share out. So again, if there's more things you want to learn about these features in the graphing calculator, let me know. I can do a Google Meet with you and we can go through it, or that learn.desmos.com is really neat. And I put a graphing link right here if you want to look at that. But what we want to talk about now is how do we share these graphs? Like if I want students to do an assignment in Desmos, what would the share feature look like? What does that mean? So we're going to get back in that calculator and talk about that. Students can share their graph with you. And I'll show you that first. They can use it in a link and post it into your LMS. They could email it to you. They could download a picture of it. What you won't see with those things is you won't see what they typed in on the side. So that's a little bit concerning. So I created one here and I can click on this for you and you can see it's basically that same one I just had. Okay. And so now now that I'm in Desmos, I can see it. So if I am sharing a picture, it will only share a picture of the graph. If you do the link, it will actually show you everything that they inputted. So those are a couple things to think about, okay? So let's look at that. So let's say I've done my work that my teacher has assigned me and now I want to share the graph. She just wants a graph. She or he just wants a graph. So I can go to share graph. And then we have some features. So we've got an embed link, we've got an export image, and we have a print. We're online, so we're not going to print these unless they look really pretty and we want to put them on the fridge. We just want to either copy the link and send that to my teacher, or if she just wants the picture of the graph, I can export the image, I can choose the size, and then I can download it to my computer and then upload it into an LMS or an email. So you can do different line thicknesses, which is pretty neat. They can change the size here if they want to make it a different type of PNG. And then it looks like they're looking at some beta ways to expose, but this is just a picture file. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing again is they can copy this link and then send that link in an LMS. So we're gonna get into the LMS in a minute, but I wanted to start with this is how they can share it. So if this is my final thing and I like it, I can copy this graph link and then I can send that to my teacher and then she can see what I did. Another thing you want to remind your students of is to sign in just like you did with their school email and account so they can save graphs just in case. You know, I'm getting some students being the school technology coordinator that say they're submitting on Canvas and aren't, and we're having issues with that. So it's always good for them to save their work so that they have it there in case there's a problem. And then they put in the Global Math Art Contest again there. So that's a big feature right now that we would use for our students to send in their work. Okay. All right. Okay, so there's a couple ways that I wanted to show you now of how students could show work and complete an assignment in the Desmos calculator, excuse me. So I thought this was a pretty neat, this is just one idea I had, is that for certain math problems, the graphing calculator could make showing steps and typing in the math symbols very easy for your students. And what I love is the graph can actually maybe show them algebraic errors. So if you click on this link at the bottom here, this is another graph. I've got too many open already, but let me get out of that. And I'm going to go to the showing work. If you just click that link, you'll have this graph. So here, this is a problem, and I could even add a note in here about simplifying, or excuse me, solve for y. So this would be the problem that I give them, and then this would be their answers. But what's really neat is as they're solving for y, they can see that the graph hasn't changed. So I really like that option. Kind of gives them, hey, look, this step was right. It's still overlapping that same equivalent equation. Now I divided by 3, same graph. Now maybe I want it in slope intercept form with mx plus b. There's that 2. And even if I were to rearrange those so that I make sure I carry over that negative, make it look real nice, then I know I still have the same line. So I thought that was pretty neat. But you could have them, you know, just not even have it with graphs. You could have them doing any problem, that maybe even factoring or solving quadratics, where they could use this to actually type a little bit better. And I'm going to save this. So now I've got that saved. And then it just might make it easier for them to type in. And then for some problems, it might be really neat that they can see that they have equivalent equations when they're doing problems. It can kind of help manage mistakes. So I thought that was pretty neat. In terms of showing this, again, they could send you the link in the shared graph, or they could even maybe screenshot it. So we're going to talk about that too. Okay. So that's just one way that they could show work using the graphing calculator. So if I wanted to screenshot on their Chromebook, maybe I just want to see a picture of what they typed in and I don't want to have to click on the link in my LMS or email, they can take a full screenshot or a partial using these keys if they hit those at the same time. On a Chromebook, the image will automatically go into their Google Drive, so they can access it there. And if they have a PC at home or a Mac, they can use a snipping tool in Windows, and then they can hit Command-Shift-4 if they're on a MacBook. Okay, so let's talk about going into Canvas and Google Classroom. So how could this work with my LMS that I might have already set up? Oops, sorry. Okay, so we're going to start with Google Classroom. And what's neat in the Google Classroom is I can put a link to the assignment in the Google Classroom and it'll have a start for them. So I'm going to show you an example of something, an assignment I made, and I'm going to show it to you in Google Classroom, and I'm going to show it to you in Canvas in a little bit. You can't actually have them access the graphing calculator in Google Classroom like you can in Canvas, but you could include a URL for them to go out like desmos.com, or you can actually share your URL link to what you've started for them already. So if I share a graph that I made as a teacher, anything I typed will show up when they click the link. Just again, make sure they've signed in to Desmos, but you can also then include notes and graph and pictures. So here's an example of that. I could actually have this assignment in Desmos linked in Canvas. So hold on just a second, let's see if I can add a participant here. Here we go. So let me show you that real quick. I'm going to click on my link. Oops. And now here's an assignment that I created for my students, and I want to talk about different linear transformations. So I started with our basic y equals x graph, and then I want them to comment on the similarities and differences between that graph and my other graphs. So I can have this ready for them to go, and I can put my share graph, but maybe I want to add a note about what they're going to do. But I can also just add that into the Google Classroom, but they're going to have this open. So we want to have them describe the similarities and differences between y equals x, which we'd call the parent graph, and the other graphs for saving time. So I might even, I'll show you how I created a word bank. So I want to be very descriptive and as much as I can when we're not around to what you want. Maybe even share an example of, you know, maybe I could go here and show this and then put in another note that I can move these around as well. Like you ask them a specific question, like what happened to the graph, or use the words increasing, decreasing, slope, and so forth. So you can add, be as specific as you can, because we're finding that that's an issue with NTI lessons, is we think we're being, you know, very descriptive, but that's not the case. So I'm going to save this. And then again, I can just share out my link in Google Classroom. Okay. So this link is really good because it's going to have all of this stuff on the side here, as well as my directions. So sharing a link for your LMS is a must. Okay. So once I've got my graph the way I want it and I have my link, then I want to go into my Google Classroom. And so I created this assignment. I'm actually going to go into my Google Classroom in a minute and show you how to do this. But I've put a descriptor, I've got a topic for my week 3 assignments, and then this is what it would look like to the students. So this was my link right here, and it actually is contained in that assignment, and the rubric is there as well. So I'm going to go over to my Google Classroom here, and I'm going to show you how I created that. So if you do use Google Classroom, I've got the create and I've got an assignment, and then I can title it. Maybe I'll just do the same here just to save time. Transformations part 2. Maybe I want to add to that with the next assignment. I put my instructions in here, and then again, I want to be really specific, and then I want to add the link. So now I'm going to put in, I'm going to just copy and paste, whoops, sorry, that link that I had from Desmos. I'm going to try to do this one again so you can see it. I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to go over here and paste, and then I'm going to add the link. And then again, I want to make sure I have really good instructions as to what they're going to do with that. And then I can put it in that classroom, do the points, give it a due date, and I can put it in that NTI week 3 assignments, use a rubric that I've reused before. If I wanted to use that same rubric that I had there, I can do it. And let me make sure those line up, and then I'm good to go. So I'm going to make this due a little bit later, and then I can assign. And so that's as easy as it is. And when students go in and click that, it will show up on their computer, and then they can play around with it. They can enter things, or you can actually have them submit this assignment on the student side. This was a description. So they could type in a Google Doc, they could type in their Desmos Calculator in the notes section, however you wanted them to submit that assignment. So, so those are the options there on the student side of things. So that's how it would work in the Google Classroom. In Canvas, which we have at our school, you can actually embed a graphing calculator into a quiz or assignment. You can't actually embed your graph. So where I have here, I'll show you the difference. Like I would love to embed this. I mean, it says embed, so we could try it. We could have this here, but what's going to happen is it's not going to let them they can manipulate it in there, but they can't turn it in. So they're going to have to do their own anyway. So I still think the link is the best, but you can embed what you have in here. It's just, again, kind of going back and forth is a little wonky. So I'm going to show you that too, how that embed works. So I'm going to copy this embed by just selecting it like it was already and copy when we go into Canvas. So I can show you the differences there. If you want just a graphing calculator for them to play with during an assignment, which I'm going to show you that too, this is the code for that. And later, if you forget what I'm doing right now, this is a little video that shows you the steps we're about to do. So you can come back to that later. Okay, so I'm going to go into Canvas. And this is an assignment I made and published that's similar to what I just did. So I can have my students play around with just a specific, with that embedded link right here. This is what that looks like. So this right here is the graphing calculator that comes with that code that we just looked at right here. It's just a plain old graphing calculator. What's really nice about this is you can put it in a quiz and they can use it for multiple problems, or I can have several questions that I want them to answer and they can play with the calculator here. It will not save this calculator. It's not attached to the student. It's just for them to play around with. So that you want to be careful of as well. And then I would suggest using that link that takes them out into Desmos to do assignments. If you have something specific you want them to graph, they could use that. So how do I do that? So I'm going to go and make a new assignment here for you to show you how Canvas assignment works. So I've got some assignments in my module here. Oops. I want to add to assignments. I'm just going to type new, save. Okay, and then I'm going to go in and edit it. Okay, so when you do embedding, you have to be, and these are the steps that are in that video that I mentioned before, you have to be in a different editor. So I'm going to put blah, 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 blah instructions, and then I want to embed my assignment to show them my graph, or I want to embed just a plain old calculator. So again, the plain old calculator, you can copy and paste this link. But I've also now got my embedded graph here for them to look at. So I'm going to go to HTML editor, which is right here, and I'm going to click on that. And what it does is it takes me into that coded place where I can then paste in my embedded code. So all you have to do is just hit return here so that you're on a new line, unless you want it right next to your words. And then you're going to copy it. You've got it copied, you're pasting it in. You can change the size of it with this 500 and 500 here. If I wanted a little bigger or smaller, I can play around with those numbers right there, the width and the height. And then all I have to do then is click back on now Rich Content Editor. And then that graph will come up. Again, what's interesting is that the whole thing doesn't come up. It's just that graph. So it's kind of like you took a picture of it and then inputted it in there. So that's why I really recommend, just if you want them to play around with a calculator, you can embed this code again that you see here, or just go ahead and shoot your link to them, copy this so that they can see that link, and then they can go out into that link. Just make sure when you copy and paste it, you just hit link. Oops. And then they can just use that link, and that will take them out into Desmos. So all they're going to get with an embedded is the picture, which is nice too if you wanted to show them a graph. Like, this is your parent graph. Now compare it to these graphs. So those are your options in terms of embedding in Desmos. You can either embed the calculator itself, which if I copy and paste this, I can put it again into that, excuse me, let me go over here, into that rich content editor, or I can put in my graph. So those are your, basically your two features there. So let me take you back to what that's going to look like on the student end of things with Canvas. Oops, sorry. Let me go back here to my home so I can get into student view for you. And then I'm going to go to Desmos Dazzle. So this is what they're going to see. And this again is with that embedded plain old calculator from the Google slide. So this is what they'll see. I'll have my directions here. I put in a word bank. This again is just a calculator for them to use. And then when they go to submit the assignment, I put a text entry as their option for submission. So they can actually go up here. They can type in they can type in the graphs that I put up in my directions. If they do something wonky with their mouse, they can always hit the home button. I'll just do one more for you. And now they can come down here and they can tell me in a paragraph or list it what differences and similarities they showed, what happened with those transformations. So I really like that kind of plain old calculator for that. It's a little more work on your end here instead of in the calculator, but then they are seeing it in real time right here, and they enter it and then they can type right here. So it's a pretty neat way for them to use the graphing calculator. And then if you had more questions in a quiz format, if you wanted the assignment to be more of a quiz, you could have them use the calculator that way too. So that's how Canvas, you can use Desmos Calculator in Canvas. And again, that's if that's the LMS of your choice. If you have a different LMS, please let me know and I can help you with that as well. Whoops. Okay, so we're getting done a little bit early. If you want some extra help with Desmos, again, look at learn.desmos.com if you want to look at some short snippet. They have good webinars too, but they have these short snippet videos that are really easy to follow. I'm going to come out and see if we have any questions. Yeah, it looks like Michael asked, you can't embed in the Google Classroom. That's right. You can only use the link for students. You can just have that link in there for them to click. And Ashley, thank you for answering that. Does anybody else have any other questions they want to add in the chat? All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on today. And we'll have this session recorded if you want to share it. Again, thank you so much for all the hard work you're doing for your students. This is a trying time, I know, and a lot of work. So thanks again. And let me know if I can help you in any way with Desmos.
Hey, Susan.
Uh-huh.
I teach 7th grade science, and I'm interested in, did not even know about Desmos until Josh mentioned it to me this morning, and I went,
cool.
Where has this been? Like, I did not know. And so I'm going to copy and paste the URL into my Google Classroom. How do you recommend, do the students on their side, because they haven't used it in their math class, when I asked our math teacher this morning, he said he had not used it before. So the kids will be coming into it for the first time to create a graph for their science online lab. Do they need to hit the sign in or the create?
They
Do
would
need to create an account?
Yeah, they would sign in with their Google account. So with their school email and password, and that will give them access right away.
And then when they finish, do they just need to copy and paste that URL like into my Google Classroom,
You got
because
it.
I'm not going to be using Canvas, so they're not embedding.
Right. Yeah, they just need to share the link with you for submission. That'd be great.
So if they hit share, then they, what were those choices again? So they hit share and then they're going to hit.
They could just copy that link. So they don't even have to, they've got a few choices here. Let me share my screen with you really quick. They've got, so when they go to desmos.com, they're going to sign in. They're going to go to the graphing calculator, and then they're going to do this sign in. Mine's going to automatically do it because I'm online here. Theirs might also too. If they're logged in, it might default to that, but I'm not sure about that. So I would sign in here. It'll be sign in, and then once they've put in what you need them to do for the science class, they'll go to share, and then they just copy this link right here, and then paste. Just Control V into the Google Classroom assignment. And that would be all they would have to do.
Awesome.
If they haven't used it before, let me show you this real quick too, if you have a minute.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to learn.desmos.com, and if you're doing, let's say, let me go to the graphing calculator here. You might send them if you want to show them how to do, I would think maybe tables or, oh, there it is. They've got tables down here. You might want to send them that little video of how to do it. There's also graphing, just entering functions, the settings. So you could even just take those videos and put them in the, just take the, like, for example, here's the graph settings one, and I'm just going to copy and paste this URL right into my, assignment description for them to watch before they get into it. So if they've never used it before, it's really, functionality wise, it's really easy to use. My students knew more about it than I did when I first started using it. So.
Well, I had looked at doing like a graph on Google Slides where I created the background and embedded it. And then I looked at Google Drawings, and once someone said Desmos, and I looked at it, I was like, this is more intuitive and easier than the Google Drawing and the Google Slide, dragging the points over and trying to create the line.
Yes.
And I just sat there and I went, well, when they said Pearson and Envisions, and I went, oh, they already have this? Like they already.
Yes, yeah.
I was super excited. I can't tell you how excited.
Good, yay. See, there's something good coming out of this.
Yeah. So I will definitely use it, and I'm super excited. Thank you for your expertise and for teaching me today. I appreciate it.
Yep. Take care, hon.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Susan, you have one question about embedding the scientific calculator also.
Yes. Okay. I just got back into that. Thank you. Ms. Dorfling, let me show you real quick. Let's look at that. Let me share my screen here again. And let's get into the scientific calculator. So we want to go down here to scientific in desmos.com. And it looks like if we want to do anything in here, we are only, let me move this out of the way here. There we go. So let's say I've got some, there we go. I'm just going to do one real quick. So there's the scientific. I could, again, snip this if I wanted to put it in something like Google Classroom. I'm going to go over here to the print feature, and I might be able to save it as a PDF if I wanted to show them the steps that I've done. It's not looking like, you could always just take this calculator and embed it into, not embed it, but I'll try to find the embed link to see if they have an embed link to put into Canvas. It won't embed into Google Classroom, but you could always copy and paste this link into like your Classroom or Canvas. Let me get out of this. So that you could say, here's the link, but let me try to, like, I could just put this scientific calculator, edit this, sorry. I could just put the link into Canvas or my Google Classroom. Like, let's say I wanted it right here. I could do that. Like, there's my link for students to click on. I'll look and see if I could find an embed for Canvas. But in terms of like sharing what you put on the screen in the scientific, it's not looking like, unless you just snipped it, that would happen. Does that answer your question? Let me get back out of here so I can see it.
Yeah, for the most part, I was just wondering if I would be able to actually embed like a calculator for them to use within my quizzes, you know, for easier access and stuff. So it doesn't give exactly what I was looking for, but I mean, it's not a huge deal if they have to, you know, go to a different window or anything to use the calculator.
That, just to, since you're telling me what, if you wanted to still embed this, the Desmos, let me share this with you again. I'm all over the place. Let me do a share real quick. Let me show you this. This might help in terms of if this doesn't annoy you too much, the graphing part, they actually have, this is the scientific calculator. So if they wanted to just use, let me get a new one here. If you didn't care that the graph was there and you just wanted to use the scientific, you could do that. So it does kind of have that scientific embedded in there with all the functions that the scientific has. But I'll look for, I'm trying to find it right now to see if it has, if anybody has a, excuse me, oh, it looks like they do. Here, I'm gonna put this. It's a mess, but they've got some here at the bottom. They've got a 4-function one. So I'll put this link in the chat for you, and maybe that'll help a little bit. But that graphing calculator does have the scientific calculator at the bottom. Just the graph kind of gets in the way.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'll end the meeting here. Thanks, Ms. Faulkner, for helping out.
Oh, you got it. I've learned something in just that small time that I was here. So
Okay, good. All right.
Cool beans. Do you want me to go ahead and end the meeting?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, then.
All right, awesome.
Take care.
We'll see you guys.
Bye.
Bye.